And this, of course, leads us to a discussion of this prosperity or tragic cycle that not just these folks, but all of mankind seems to want to go throughout humanity. Any thoughts from this chapter or about this scenario here as you see in these verses in chapter 11 and then into chapter 12 here?
Years ago, there was a general authority. We were sitting in a room in Jerusalem and talking about how the Lord was going to get the gospel to other peoples in that part of the world. And the authority raised this very issue from Helaman, that maybe the Lord could cause a famine in this part of the world. You can't really eat your petrodollars.
Yeah.
A way of humbling people to be in a position to listen.
Yeah.
I wrote in my margin here from President Kimball, April Conference of 77, he said, the Lord uses the weather sometimes to discipline his people for the violation of his laws. So that's one way of bringing them around, if they will.
Yeah. And the tragedy is when people have been humbled by this and then they start to turn away, it doesn't take, in other words, the reversal doesn't take very long. We see that phrase again in the space of not many years is used 4 times here in the book of Helaman, where things are turning around so quickly.
Well, as we've seen in our day, the horrible violence of 9/11. But how we seem to have quickly forgotten. That was just a few years ago.
That's right. Yeah, things change quickly, doesn't it? And now we've got the Gadiantans so numerous, so large, and in verse 31, 32 of chapter 11, they're defying the whole armies of the Nephites. I mean, these guys are just, it's grown from where they were apparently virtually, not a major effect, and now all of a sudden the whole of their society is once again on the line. And so we see this, you're prosperous, and then you begin to get proud and haughty, and you start getting wicked, and then the Lord's going to have to do something to chasten you, and you start to repent, and He'll deliver you, and we turn it into a fan. We just kind of keep it going. We could get a little breeze off it almost as fast as we seem to turn it around. So,
the center pole though of that the prophets try to keep bringing you back to again and again are these repeated references to Christ either being the rock of our Redeemer, or in chapter 8 you have Nephi trying to focus them in on the ancient account of the serpent on the pole. In the Book of Mormon, this is a curious thing, 5 times the brazen serpent in Numbers chapter 21 is mentioned in the Book of Mormon as the prophets repeat that with their people. And in our Old Testament text, it really has one primary spot. There's a brief reference maybe to another one in Hezekiah that people had misinterpreted it. There's a couple in the New Testament, but it doesn't get near the press that it does in the Book of Mormon.
And that's the great illustration. That it didn't heal them because they refused to look.
That's right.
Why didn't they look? Because they didn't believe it would heal them. Yeah. It's the same reason why many people won't look to Christ these days, because they don't really think He can heal them.
It's a little passé, It's that.
Well, this becomes really the plight of humanity, the human frailty, and it will lead, in my mind, to maybe the biggest editorial in the Book of Mormon, which is chapter 12. I mean, this is Mormon just saying, okay,
powerful.
Here he is. I've read the whole history of our people. I've seen much of your day, and I'm writing this for you, and I'm just here to tell you this is the dilemma. And so, any thoughts about his editorial here in chapter 12 that
we should read these verses?
Well, first off, it's Mormon's handprint, his huge old handprint. I've worked with, been an editor myself, and worked with others, and part of the key to editing in our culture, our intellectual culture, is be as discreet as possible. You need to bring out the works of the other people. Mormon breaks all the editing rules. He wants you to know why he's bringing this book to you. And so thus we see in chapter 12, just jumps off the page at you.
Go ahead and read some of this for us, Kelly, would you, please?
12:1. And thus we can behold how false, and also the unsteadiness of the hearts of the children of men. Yea, we can see that the Lord in His great infinite goodness doth bless and prosper those who put their trust in Him. Yea, and we may see at the very time when He doth prosper His people, yea, in the increase of their fields, their flocks, their herds, gold, silver, and all manner of precious things of every kind and art, sparing their lives, delivering them out of the hands of their enemies, softening the hearts of their enemies that they should not declare wars against them. yea, and in fine, doing all things for the welfare and happiness of his people, yea, then is the time that they do harden their hearts, and do forget the Lord their God, and do trample under their feet the Holy One. Yea, and this because of their ease and their exceedingly great prosperity.
We see that, don't we? And you look at the next 3 or 4 verses, and I see here what I kind of refer to as spiritual dyslexia. Dyslexia, getting things just backwards, and the people have got it. You notice it here, for example, in verse 4, how quick to do iniquity, slow to do good, should be just the reverse. You see, we should be slow to do iniquity, quick to do good, quick to hearken to the words of the evil one, and verse 5, slow to remember the Lord their God. People get this just backwards of how it ought to be, and this is the tragedy of humankind that we face in our lives, and that the dilemma is just tragic.
And verse 6 goes on to talk about part of the reason for their actions is they don't want anybody controlling them. They want to be in charge. They want to follow their own desires. And we see that over and over again today as well, both in family situations with children with parents, in church situations with members with the brethren, and of course, us with our Father in heaven. And yet again we come back to our will needs to be to follow His will.
Yeah. Now, are you coming back to verse 3?
We can, sure, we ought to. Please, let's do that now.
That's the verse. Thus we see that except the Lord doth chasten His people with many afflictions, yea, except He doth visit them with death and with, there's an interesting word, terror, and with famine, and with all manner of pestilence, they will not remember Him.
Yeah.
So, because He loves us, He says several places, because He loves us, He chastens us.
Yeah.
So He's going to chasten us with some hard things in our lives to teach us eternally valuable lessons.
This whole chapter is sometimes referred to as the Thus We See chapter. It's just it's an editorial that Mormon drops right in, and the meta message that he wants to say is certainly when the Lord prospers us and blesses us, then we get more caught up in the blessing, and we forget that. And I noticed that President Eyring, in our conference of 2007, October, he actually said, and the challenge to remember has always been the hardest for those who are blessed abundantly.
And the rich don't need God.
Yeah.
They already have all
and so
the
and
money.
then he ended, my point is to urge you to find ways to recognize and remember God's kindness. Mormon's message certainly is the Lord will bless you when you're righteous. Don't let that overpower you. And it's such a great statement from the Book of Mormon.
A good note for us to end on. Thank you so much, Keith.